Welcome to the Veterans Impact Show, where we continue the mission of highlighting veterans and service organizations who continue to serve our community and our nation. We're brought to you by Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Don't worry, retire happy. Welcome aboard. Well, I am just so fired up today because one of my favorite things to do is be here with you, Chuck. And
we're gonna have to get you a life, my friend.
One of your known to plume was when you were a helicopter pilot was to be E. Cheese.
My call sign was Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah. Oh,
and there's a story we won't go into that this morning.
That. Most of the call signs I've ever heard would leave you laughing, but would probably leave a blank screen on the TV.
Some of them are pretty obvious, and anybody who's got kids can appreciate the Chuck E. Cheese thing.
You bet.
And we're coming to you in my brand new, first time I've worn this, Born in a Bar shirt, but in green because this is my St. Patrick's Day shirt. So happy St. Patrick's Day, a day late and a dollar short.
Well, that's okay. One of the big things when you talk about Chuck E. Cheese, you're talking about kids, young people, and young people has been a passion for most of my adult life. I worked in a halfway house for teenage kids coming out of the prison system. I have been involved in veterans activities, and many times I think one of the most important things is what we do for the next generation. And one of the things that I have been so blessed to be involved with is Colonel Jeff Galt and the Army Scholarship Foundation. So welcome aboard, Colonel Galt. How are you today?
Thank you, Jim. How are you, Chuck? And we're doing well. Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely.
It's always a pleasure. And one of the things is this will be the inaugural program that goes out on our new network, DBNA. And I got to tell you, what
DBNA
TV. And
got to put the TV in there.
And it's a great start with that to talk about the Army Scholarship Foundation and young people. So we're going to be telling a lot of great stories today about these young men and women who've applied for scholarships in their life. So, Jeff, tell us a little bit about the Army Scholarship Foundation and how you got started and what you guys do.
Well, Jim, the Army Scholarship Foundation was founded after 9/11 by a group of Army veterans who saw many of their friends and former colleagues going off to war and wanted to continue to serve as veterans. And so they established this scholarship foundation to help the children of soldiers. And so the Army Scholarship Foundation provides academic scholarships to children of soldiers and spouses of active duty enlisted soldiers, and has done so, as I said, since 2001. Over these 20 plus years, we've awarded over 2,000 scholarships to our military family members. I became involved about 3 years after the founding. Rose, at the time, my wife, was working with the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation. And the founders kind of reached out to the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation to look for best practices and how they were doing things. And then they sort of said, well, we're looking for somebody to help us out. And Rose said, I know someone. And I got volunteered.
No, you got voluntold.
Yeah.
Well, considering your wife is from Belgium, and she's a redhead, Mama said don't ever mess with a redhead. And so when Rose speaks, you listen. Great lady. One of the things I think is so great is these scholarships create an opportunity for these young men and women to leverage up and get other scholarships because they're vetted by your foundation, the Army Scholarship Foundation. So it starts a mindset of achievement when they go through the application process. And it's amazing. And Diane and I have had the good fortune to be part of the team that reviews those applications. And Jeff, how many applications do you get per year?
We get between 300 and 400 a year. And it's been going up the past few years, 5 or 10% every year as the word gets out. And then our challenge is, of course, to be able to provide a scholarship to every qualified and deserving military family member, which we have not been able to do Up to now, it's a financial issue. We just don't have the money to help every single applicant. But that's our goal, is to be able to help them all, number one. And then number two, to start to raise the amounts of the scholarships once we're able to help every applicant.
So you set the next question up well. What is the average scholarship that is awarded by your organization?
Well, it's an interesting question, Chuck. Right now, the average is $1,000. And the dilemma is, do you give more scholarships with less money or less scholarships with more money? And so there's a fine balance there that you have to strike. And up to now, we have increased the amount over the years. We were initially giving 500 in our early years. But of course, with inflation and all the other challenges, we want to increase that amount. But our philosophy right now is, if a military family member goes through the effort to apply for a scholarship, we want to be able to send them a letter that says, congratulations, you have been selected. Even if it's a small amount, that's a great thing for that student. As Chuck or as Jim mentioned, that sort of helps them with applying for other scholarships. We'd rather give them a yes rather than to give them a note that says, we regret to inform you that you were not selected for this award. So right now, we're erring on the side of a little less money, but more awards to more kids.
And that's really laudable that you're doing this. Most of our veterans will understand the next comment I'm going to make, but for our non-veteran listeners, I want to discuss two challenges that our military personnel face, and this is across the board, even though we're specifically talking Army scholarships. Although I have to say, as a Marine to my soul, it does my heart good that you came to us to learn how to do this right. But we'll move on from there. Let's go back to the serious. We have two major problems with especially our active duty personnel. One, they don't make a lot of money. So funding college is a massive challenge. And you're absolutely right, every dollar absolutely matters. But two, because they are transferred so often, and many of them keep their permanent residence. I know my little brother hasn't been stationed back in Texas, and he'll be retiring here at the start of 2024. He hadn't been back in Texas in 30 years, but Texas is his home of residence. So he can't get in California and in Virginia, where he was stationed most of the time, he doesn't qualify for in-state tuition rates.
You're
and it creates a real challenge, especially for our enlisted people who are still weighing. They're like teachers. I liken them to teachers. Talking about two professions that do it because they love it, but they are grossly underpaid for what they give back to society.
Absolutely. But one of the most important things, I think, is, and to go back to this, we're being redundant, the fact that they get the scholarship vets them, gives them incentive, and gives them help to go forward. And I think that's one of the most important things, is that mindset of, yes, I can do this. And yes, I've got this help. And it's not just a one time, because you guys frequently continue to award those scholarships to those deserving young people to get them through. I remember the young lady who was going to nursing school at TWU that spoke at one of your luncheons. Tell us a little bit about that story.
We had a lady who was a spouse of an enlisted soldier who was stationed apart from her, and she had two young kids and was going to college full time and was working full time and trying to go to manage the kids and so on. So she only saw her husband every couple of months. And she spoke at our luncheon and told the story about how she was struggling to get through college and was commuting to school and paying for childcare. And her husband was a private first class, so not making much money. And the interesting story was that one of our defense contractors was in the audience when she spoke and was so impressed that he went up to her afterwards and he said, "When you graduate, we want to hire you." And that's exactly what happened. And she was hired. So
very nice.
So you never know when you're involved in this. Also, one of the points that you guys have both made, because Chuck, you were the brat of military. Your dad served in the
Air Force.
Okay.
And brat, and I will say this before anybody gets offended in this era of semantics. Well, we brats wear that term very proudly.
Oh, I know.
It doesn't take long for that to come out when you're talking to somebody who's been a brat.
But let's talk about the fact that those kids, and Jeff, you've talked about it so much in the past, those young people go through so many different school districts as their parents move from base to base. You know, I don't quite understand why the military doesn't leave people in a place that they could build roots, because they're just simply going from base to base throughout their career. Join the Navy and see the world. Yeah. But for your kids, how many schools do you go through? How many schools did your kids go through, Jeff?
Yeah. No, I have 3 kids and each one of them went to 8 different schools.
Wow.
And it's a challenge. I met a young lady the other day who was a daughter of a career military soldier. And she said she had been to 10 different schools during her growing up period through high school. So they're always having to make new friends, to adjust to new requirements. They miss out on extracurricular activities and sports teams. I'll give an example of my son. We moved from Europe to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, his freshman year in high school, and he had played in the band in our previous assignment. We went down to the Carlisle High School to get him into the band, and the band teacher said, "Well, I'm sorry, I've already got all of my positions. You know, it's all set for the particular instrument that he played, bass clarinet at the time." He said, "I've got enough. I don't need you." And we pestered him, and fortunately, the band director relented and said, "Okay, I will let you play in the pit." And the pit is the drum line that's static along the sides of the football field at halftime shows. So he got to be in the band as a pit drummer, but just because of our persistence. And many, many kids who are on football teams or others are told no when they move in the summer. They miss out on those extracurricular activities.
And that's the disadvantage of the military. You don't move according to the academic schedules of the school year.
No, the military is not worried about your kids' academic schedules. But I will say this, in defense of the military, they try to be very, very accommodating to that when they can. But the military has a different job, and I know people. I know people in corporate America who've had the same problem. I think the military kids have it a little better because our culture, we're used to it. And it was almost exciting to show up at school every new year to see who the new kids were. There was always a group of new kids, and you wind up making friends, and thanks to things like Facebook, you reconnect over the years.
So these kids, while they have a lot of issues of changing school and etc., Jeff, many of these kids, from what we read, all of these wonderful applications, they're outstanding. They do some great things, and very frequently they go on many times to the academies, many times to ROTC programs, many times to other programs, or go into the military. It's almost like
it's the family business.
It's the family business. Well, I got to tell you, we're going to have a great conversation as we continue. Take a look at the ArmyScholarshipFoundation.org. We want you to donate. This is a passion of mine, taking care of young people. Go there, help us put more scholarships and more kids in college from the Army. I tell you what, we're going to be right back after these words from all of our partners, but we want you to become our partner. We want you to go to the ArmyScholarshipFoundation.org and help them out. to make sure another kid gets a scholarship. We'll be right back after this word. This is the Veterans Impact Show.
After you get back, throw it over to me. 'Cause you'll
Welcome
always
back to
forget
the
do
Veterans
something.
Impact Show. And thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this great conversation. Chuck, you got some great ideas with your background as a young person who grew up.
God, I love you for that.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about that and how it relates to the Scholarship Foundation.
And before we jump back in, I'd like to take just a minute. I want to thank Nathaniel Smith from Ascend Podcasts. He is the producer of our show, and the lovely Miss Diane Blythe, who is our social media director and is responding to everybody who jumps on Facebook and makes a comment. Please follow us on Facebook. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. We are growing this, and we are super, super excited to kick this off with DBNA TV. And this is going to be a great platform. This is a national platform for us. And so we're going to, one of the things that we've done when we've jumped over to StreamYard is we have significantly upgraded the show. But I have to mention, we are coming to you from the ready room of the USS Midway, which is parked in San Diego in a floating museum. Okay, we're not actually sitting there. It's just a picture. But I love it, and it was a picture that Nathaniel found. And the other reason I love it is I've actually landed on the Midway. So, I mean, it's not the biggest claim to fame I have. I've also got a picture of me sitting on the back of the USS New Jersey. Not many people can say they've landed on a battle wagon.
No, that's for sure.
And there's fewer and fewer of them all the time. But let's get back to a really good conversation and what we're really talking about. And we use the Army Scholarship Foundation as a medium to help our military brats. And Jeff, talk a little bit about the success stories we've had. I didn't catch how long you've been involved with this. I know it was about 3 years after they kicked everything off. But what kind of success stories, what kind of results are we seeing?
We have these kids are remarkable. It's predominantly kids, although we also give scholarships to spouses of active duty enlisted soldiers. But the stories, these are high achievers, as Jim mentioned. They are able to overcome the moves and the dislocations and making new friends to be able to volunteer. So many of them are volunteers in their communities. So many of them are have jobs and other extracurricular activities to support what they're doing. I'll give you a success story, if you will. A young lady who we had, who lives here in Dallas, who came to our scholarship luncheon last year and was able to speak. She had been going to college, and the pandemic hit. Her father became terribly, terribly ill and had to stop work, and the family was living hand to mouth. She dropped out of school, went to work, and was able to get a full-time job to help support her family. Now, we're talking about a 19, 20-year-old young lady here. And following the pandemic, the father recovered and was able to get work. And she reapplied to us and got an award and went back to school, has been able to continue. She will graduate here this December. And as I mentioned, she spoke at our luncheon and told her story of the challenges that she and her family had gone through. And there were two people in the audience, similar to our previous story, two people in the audience who offered her a job right there. Hey, when you graduate, we'd like to hire you. And so she has really done well and has been able to overcome some of these challenges.
So we could modify this from the Army Scholarship Foundation to the Army Scholarship and Job Placement Foundation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we want more corporations. We want more businesses to know these young men and women have drive. They have ambition. They have leadership in their DNA because they're in military families and they're different. They do well academically. They do well as self-starters. We've seen that so much. So this is important. Again, we want you to go to the Army Scholarship Foundation.org, right?
Sure.
And the Marine Corps trained them on how to get it started.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So you know you can work with crayon font when you get over there.
All right. We're going to be talking more about this. We want to challenge you. Go to the Army Scholarship Foundation.org. Donate. Help us put more young men and women into college, get educations. Help them to get a hand up, not a handout. This is important. People ask me all the time, Jim, who do you vet? Who do you give your money to? Who do you give your time and effort to? I'll tell you, Diane and I volunteer with the Army Scholarship Foundation. We believe in it. We want you to believe in it. And this is the Veterans Impact Show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show. And thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this great conversation.
Welcome back to the Veteran Impact Show. I'm kind of jumping in here because
go for it.
Got a couple questions for Jeff. Jeff, talk about, in addition to donations on your site, what are the other fundraising techniques that you use? And then I've got a follow-up question of that really has nothing to do with that question, but I'll follow up anyway.
Just to mention, a number of the things we do are in Dallas, but we are a nationwide and a worldwide organization. We have scholarship applications from children, family members who are serving in Korea, in Europe, around the world, wherever our military serves. So while we're in Dallas and fundraise primarily in Dallas, we support the military worldwide. So we participate in the Texas Community Foundation's North Texas Giving Day. And as a part of the Giving Day, we receive scholarship or donations from, again, around the world. We host a luncheon every fall and have 200 or 300 people that attend the luncheon. We generally have a senior military person or a veteran who is a speaker. We had Major General Ken Camper last year, who was a commanding general of Fort Sill. We have had General John Abizaid. We've had Congressman Alan West. We've had General Gordon Sullivan, former Chief of Staff of the Army, as speakers at these luncheons. So we've had a luncheon every year for the last going on close to 10 years now. In the fall or in the spring, we also have some fundraisers. We had a lecture and dinner on spirits, fine wines and spirits by an expert here in the fall.
How did I not get invited to that? That's right up my alley.
Oh, yeah. Because, see, I can't drink, and you would have had a ball.
Yeah, because I'd have gotten all of your samples.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I take my wife, because she doesn't drink either. So I get all of mine and I get all of hers. And I have a designated driver. So, Jeff, talk a little bit about, and it was interesting. I have seen several news shows and commentary, and frankly, I'm a big believer in it. How can the scholarships be used? And where I'm going is, are these eligible to pay for trade school as opposed to college?
Yes, we do. We do provide for, and in fact, here of our recipients attending short to be mechanics. We have airplane or aircraft repair, a number of other trade schools where our military family members wish to follow on with their continuing education and certification, and we do support that. Only requirement we have is that it must be accredited.
Right. Absolutely. I understand that. But that's really outstanding. And I say this, and not to go too far off on a tangent, the cost of college is rising and has been rising faster than inflation and for the last 20 years. It's gotten to the point where it's fairly ridiculous for a family. And I know that my son, who's 19, and I had this discussion. I'm very proud of my Eagle Scout, and I'll throw that out there. But we had a long conversation about that, and we toured a couple of trade school facilities. We've been an outstanding one here in Collin County, where the show is based. We talked to, and he toured the Frisco Fire Department and looked into that. And our education system is almost entirely set up to be college prep. And he considered it. We've got some advantages. We've got access to a scholarship so he can go to college, at least on the tuition side, so that's covered. And we're thankful for that. But I realized here's a chance for him to spend 6 months to 2 years doing training at something, walking out with nowhere near the level of debt, and walking into a job that's paying $75,000 a year. He was going to start as a fireman after 6 months, $75,000 a year. Now, those guys get paid what they should get paid, because that is a job that makes a difference. But I'm glad that you do that, because I think that's really important. And I'm off on one of my personal tangents, and I am a big believer in trade schools. We have a critical shortage of skilled labor training in Texas. So everybody in the nation, you hear that? Yet another reason to come to Texas. We've got jobs.
Well, one of the other things too is, don't a lot of these young people end up or going into the family business of the military, Jeff? Many cases,
Yes.
aren't they?
Yes.
They also going into the military?
Statistically, we see that about 25% to a third of all enlistees are people who are coming from military background families. So yes, that's one of the great sources of enlistments in our military today, and that's for all services.
And we love that, because unfortunately, enlistments are really struggling. And I was shocked to find out recently, I was visiting with one of the recruiters. We think about when all of us went into the service, everybody played sports, everybody did stuff. We didn't have video games. These kids today, it is shocking. Only I think it's like a third. It was a ridiculously small number.
23%.
Is it 23% qualify to enlist? What is going on in our country? Sorry, I don't want to go political on that, and that's certainly not any particular party. That's not a political statement. It's just a trend in the country. The pool of people to enlist just gets smaller and smaller. So I absolutely applaud what you guys are doing to help get those numbers up.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I've gotten involved with the Army Scholarship Foundation, is because it's going so far. Now, it is primarily to help members of the armed forces, a member of the Army. There is a scholarship foundation also from the Army Emergency Relief. Ray Mason is a very good friend of ours, good friend of yours, Jeff. And the Army Emergency Relief provides some scholarships. Navy and Marine Corps Relief provides some scholarships. Mm-hmm. One of the other things young men and women need to know about is there are tremendous opportunities to go to colleges that have JROTC programs and get a full scholarship. If somebody wanted to go to med school, if they can qualify, they can go to some of the best schools in the nation. They can go to Duke, and good grief, they can get all of their medical training paid for. Now, they'll do typically 6 years, guys?
I think it's about 6 years.
Yeah, but
generally, 2 to 3 years for every year they put you through school. But the training, and I will tell this story as we're talking about education real fast. I did a month of temporary duty as a recruiting officer when I got out of flight school, and I got there and I was down at the University of Texas. So I guess I did sort of kind of attend the University of Texas in a kind of offhanded way, but they were really looking for JAG officers. And so, and we're really talking to those who want to be lawyers or those who want to be doctors. really consider the military, because that's what I did. And what I do is I'd go hang out at the library. I'd strike up a conversation with somebody. Easiest question in the world: what kind of lawyer do they want to be? Well, all lawyers. It's like everybody goes to flight school, starts out wanting to be a fighter pilot. Everybody who goes to law school, I say everybody, I'm being a little facetious, but they all want to be trial lawyers. And I said, so kind of explain to me, because I'm not, that's not my profession. What's your path? And goes, well, I'll probably have to go to work at some firm and clerk for 3 to 5 years before I can get in the courtroom. And I said, well, what if I could talk to you about a program that you'd be practicing law in court pretty much day one? Oh, and by the way, we'll cover the cost of law school. And it was funny. We recruited, and we didn't get them while I was there, but I talked to them later, and they said, yeah, we got 3 of your guys to sign up, because, and this is a few years back, college wasn't quite as expensive. So the opportunities, and that's where Jim started this and got me off running. The opportunities in the military are just stupendous, just incredible. A good friend of mine from college wound up becoming an Army doctor, retired from the Army after 20 years, and wound up writing his own ticket to go out into private practice. The same thing for the JAG officers on the lawyer side. Oh, my Lord. And we were just talking about trade schools. You go in and you're an aviation mechanic. I know 4 companies in DFW today. Now, one of them's looking for somebody in Maryland at Pax River, but they're looking for aviation mechanics like crazy. And they pretty much walk out of the military and double their salary.
Oh, they do well. And again, even if you're active duty and you're going to be going to school, you could qualify for the Army Scholarship Foundation to help you with some of that, couldn't you, Jeff?
The spouses of active duty, yes.
The spouses,
or if the student, if the child of a soldier is, and we do have some of these, a child of a soldier who is going to college, have enlisted and are on a delayed entry program or are in the reserves, they can get scholarships from us, yes.
No, that's just outstanding.
And let's talk about the need, because Diane and I had such a great experience going through and understanding and learning by reading these applications. These kids write an essay that is amazing, and they talk about their life and their story and why they want to do that. And I got to tell you, it's really, in many cases, it's uplifting. It'll fire you up. When you read their story, you go, my goodness gracious, this person has overcome huge things, and look at where they're going and what they want to do. That's very true, isn't it, Jeff?
Oh, yes. Yes. It's amazing the things that these military family members overcome. We already talked about the financial and the challenges and so on, but they also have so many of these kids are writing about, one of our essay topics is, who is your hero? And I'm surprised, maybe not surprised, how many of them write about their military father in most cases and say, my dad is my hero. He came back from Afghanistan or Iraq broken, wounded, PTSD, injured in some way, and they go through so many different medical and just life challenges, and the kids are seeing this, and they're helping their families, they're helping their fathers, and they talk about what their entire family has gone through. And I'm not talking just about that, the returns, but think about the worries when your military family member is deployed. Every time the phone rings, every time the doorbell rings, you're always worried because your soldier is in harm's way overseas somewhere, and you don't know. The uncertainty and the fear and the worry is a constant part of these families' lives that these kids have to overcome.
It's a tremendous sacrifice, and most people don't understand. When they see me and I wear my baseball cap that says Navy, oh, thank you for your service. And I think to myself, thank you for my mom Thank you for my dad, who was Navy. Thank you for my grandparents. They all encouraged me, and they were all there, and they all wrote to me and supported my effort. And that's huge. And we see that in the military community, Chad.
Absolutely. And as I was listening to Jeff talking about these young people, a word has come to mind that many of these kids have, and it's resilient. These kids are resilient, and it prepares them better to face life. But the other side of that coin, some of them really struggle too. And I am glad to see there are programs out there for kids like that. We're getting a little off topic because we're really talking about the Army Scholarship Fund here. Jeff's work for years now with it, as well as his wife's work with it. It is his lifelong passion. And the motto of our show is Charlie Mike, continue the mission. We want to highlight those people who continue the mission. And Jeff, I've got to say, it's not glitzy, it's not glamorous, but what you're doing is making a significant difference in the life of our veterans. And for that, I want to thank you.
Well, Jeff, we're going to come back and bring this back into the dock in just a minute. And again, we want people to go to armyscholarshipfoundation.org. It's important. It's important to support our Army, support our military, support our community. These are the leaders of tomorrow. These are the leaders that we're going to be looking to for leadership. And I got to tell you, it's important because so many of them come from that military background, military family, and we want to support them. So again, go to the armyscholarshipfoundation.org. Join me. Join this movement. Be a part of it. Join Veteran Impact Show in supporting Army Scholarship Foundation. Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show. And thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this great conversation. Well, this is a great program. We're talking about one of my favorite things, which is young people. And we're talking about where you were many, many, many years ago.
Many moons ago, I was a military brat.
As a military brat. And I got to tell you, you turned out pretty well. I think there's a lot of people that might argue that. But.
Well, 20 years ago, I married Michelle, and that kind of got me on a much better path. So I'm going to give her a lot of credit, too. No, we're just kidding.
No, that we're not with that one.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Like most of us, our wives have been the anchor in our world and our families. And that's another message that we're trying to get out there. And I appreciate it. Don't get me wrong. I understand organizations like Tunnels to Towers and the One Tribe Foundation, which started out working on veteran suicide. But the problem, these organizations have been so effective at fundraising, they've convinced everybody that everybody in the military is broke. And I don't mean financially broke. I mean mentally and physically broke. And that's just not the case. There are people, there are veterans that are struggling, and we're doing what we can to help them. But the vast majority of our military, they are hardworking. They're very quiet. They're dedicated. They're not a big political lobbying group. So a lot of times they get forgotten by our people in Congress. And I am blessed that both the congressmen, I actually have now, I call it 3 congressmen, because I got one in Denton County, I got one in Collin County, and I got one of them that has all of Frisco. 2 of them are veterans, and one of them has been one of the strongest supporters of veterans on the Hill. But that's not the case with everybody. And so it's gratifying to me. I say gratifying. It's part of our mission is we want to make sure that as people, as we move away from the global war on terror, and I promise you it's not that far gone, it's still out there. We want to make sure veterans don't fall off the radar, and programs like this with what Colonel Jeff Galt is doing are critical, absolutely critical to supporting that veteran community. So, Jeff, we thank you a ton for that and for the work that you do.
And your beautiful wife, Rose, great friend of
Thank you.
ours. And you were a United States Army bird colonel. Very quickly, where did you serve? Through a lot in Europe, wasn't it?
Yes, I had 4 tours in Germany, one with NATO in the Netherlands, and then 2 deployments to the Middle East. I was in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and then another subsequent deployment for 13 months. So all told, somewhere around 14 years overseas out of my close to 30 years service.
And Rose was an undersecretary. Correct me, because I can't always remember it, but she was very much involved with the Air Force, wasn't she?
Yes,
As an
yes, she was a senior official with the Air Force, a deputy assistant secretary of the Air Force.
So we call her honorable. And
Yes.
because you're Army, we don't call you honorable? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I have to salute her. You know, you in the military, the flag officer level people have little stars that they have in the windshield of their cars. And when you go onto installations, normally the gate guards will they'll salute you, and we have one on our car for her with 3 stars.
Oh, outstanding!
How about that?
Whenever we go in,
before Jim goes to prayer, real fast. Next week, very exciting guests. We've got Dr. John Buford and we have Sean Georges. They have written a book on mission. We're going to talk a lot about leadership next week. I've heard them on a podcast. This is going to be a lot of fun.
All right.
Take it to prayer.
And I want to say a special prayer and a special thank you to Fairway, my company, who supports us. My NMLS number is 311548, and theirs is 2289. Fairway has been fantastic. We're going to have some great speakers from Fairway come join us. But I want to say a prayer. Dear Lord God, we thank you for our active duty military. We thank you for protecting them and guiding them and taking care of their families. Thank you for our veterans and all they do in our community in leadership and bringing this nation back together. This is our mission, to continue the mission of bringing people back together. This we pray in your great name. Amen. So, Lord God, we thank you for guys like Jeff Galt. And Jeff, thank you for being on board with us today.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for having us.
All right. We want you to subscribe. We want you to stay tuned. Join us, Veterans Impact Show, DB and A TV, our new network that we're
Brand
on
new.
is excited. We're still in South Texas on the Noble Network. We're still in California on AUN. Thank you, everybody, for supporting us. Thank you for being a part of Veterans Impact Show. We'll see you next week.
I won't falter, never failing. Keep on pushing.